All right. Happy Friday and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for September the 20th, 2024, the 38th Friday of the year as we wrap up the 38th week of the year, and what a week it has been. Today is National Tradesman Day. Tradesmen or women, electricians, carpenters, cement masons, bricklayers, auto mechanics, the people that make the world go round. If that is you, kudos to you. And perfect for a Friday. Today is National Pepperoni Pizza Day. Not to be confused with National Pizza Day, which is in February. Pepperoni is the most in-demand, most common pizza topping, so it gets a day all its own. Enjoy. And if you watch Newsmax on a regular basis, you may know that Carl Higbie, host of Frontline, sat down with former President Donald Trump in New York last night. Before we get to that, I have to talk about some of the incredible news that you may have missed, especially from Capitol Hill. First off, at the House Homeland Security Committee hearing, retired Border Patrol Chief Aaron Higbie from San Diego testified that the Biden-Harris administration instructed border agents not to report the increased numbers of terrorist encounters at the border to the American people.
Prior to this administration, the San Diego sector averaged 10 to 15 SIA arrests per year. Once word was out the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more than that registered this year. These are only the ones we caught. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on this increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border.
Wow. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border. Think about that. The White House instructed border agents not to let us know the truth about the number of terrorists being encountered at the border.
For the first time in my 25 years, and under 5 different administrations, whether through neglect or on purpose, I saw a large-scale lapse in our ability to return people to their country of origin. The inability to send people home meant that most people being arrested for illegal entry would either have to be detained or released. The current administration, however, from day one, made a point of decreasing the amount of detention space available nationwide.
There you go. Mr. Higbie, who the left will somehow try to discredit, has been with Border Patrol for 25 years, recently retired. This should have been the biggest, most explosive story of the day. But no, Donald Trump insulted illegal Haitian immigrants. They're lying. They have lied. They're lying. It's a cover-up, whatever you want to call it. Biden-Harris billed as the most transparent administration in history. The vice president, the border czar, who is running to be the president. And it gets even better. While this was happening, 158 House Democrats voted against a bill that would deport non-citizens who commit violent crimes against women. Why? Why in the world would anyone vote against the Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act? One reason could be they really don't care. Another could be the resolution was put forward by a Republican, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who said 158 left-wing members of Congress just voted against deporting rapists, pedophiles, and murderers of women and kids. That's from South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Rob Schmitt spoke about it with Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz joins us now, just endorsed by National Border Patrol Council President Paul Perez, and they are both with us. And gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. Senator, I'll start with you. Your reaction to that?
Look, it is both shocking and sadly not shocking, because this is the pattern of duplicity, of mendacity we've seen from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They deliberately broke the border. They opened the border. You just had testimony there of one sector, hundreds of potential terrorists coming into this country, and the Democrats doing everything they can to lie to the American people and say this isn't happening. What is happening right now at the border is a humanitarian crisis. It is a public safety crisis, but it is a national security crisis. We are today at a greater risk of a major terrorist attack than any time since September 11th, 2001. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris continue to double down on the same open border policies. So does my opponent who's running against me, Colin Allred, a very, very left-wing congressman who has voted in favor of open borders over and over and over again. And I'll tell you, Rob, Chuck Schumer has been explicit. I'm his #1 target. The Democrats are flooding over $100 million against me in Texas because they want a left-wing open borders Democrat to be elected. And just this past week, Liz Cheney jumped in, and Liz Cheney is campaigning with this open border Democrat along with Kamala Harris. And so I want to say to your viewers, come to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. I need your help because there are millions of dollars coming in trying to flip Texas because the Democrats want these open borders to continue forever.
It's unbelievable. And Liz Cheney endorsing, boy, what credibility she's lost. Paul, the former Border Patrol official that testified also said that the administration not only flew illegals from California to Texas to kind of spread it around, but also they demanded that agents move them out of the sight of the media. So they're making the country more dangerous. They're trying to conceal that and then also hide it from the media at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Everything they've done from day one, they wanted to silence everybody in green. So they made sure that the high-level managers weren't able to tell the truth about what was going on. We've been talking about this since day one because we knew this administration was going to be disastrous, and we've continued. Everything Chief Higbie said was true. They wanted to silence everybody for those reasons. They've ignored this border for the first 3.5 years of the administration. Now they're trying to come out and say they're strong on border security. Jeez. Nothing could be further from the truth. You're not going to talk to any one of our people out there on the border that's going to tell you things are better or going to get better. It's going to get worse. We can't afford another 8 years of this continuing administration.
That's National Border Patrol President Paul Perez with Texas Senator Ted Cruz on Rob Schmitt Tonight. Okay, on to Carl Higbie's primetime interview with President Trump.
Top of your agenda, migrant crisis right now. There's crime everywhere, hundreds of percent higher of mass migration under Kamala Harris.
And getting worse.
And worse, And they didn't seem to realize it until you brought up cat memes. But there's also $70 billion last year left the country that was wages earned by migrants that were untaxed, that were shipped back to their home countries. You talked about mass deportation. Is there any way to recoup some of that money leaving the country?
Well, we can. We can do it through the governments, and we can do lots of different things. But the biggest thing is we have to get these, in many cases, criminals. You know, Carl, many of them come from prisons and jails. They come from mental institutions, I always say, and insane asylums, which is a step beyond. They're terrorists. They're gang members. They're people that are causing tremendous crime in the cities. And their crime is down 70, 80% in some of these places. They've taken their criminals and they put them in the United States. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. I mean, you have not seen anything yet. Wait till you see. As you know, in Colorado, the governor doesn't know what to do. He has no clue. They're taking over the Venezuelans. They have weapons like military-style weapons, maybe even more sophisticated. And they're walking in, young, strong guys, lots of them. And they're taking over real estate in Colorado and Aurora. And you know what's happening in Ohio? That's been well documented. When you have 32,000 people coming in from Haiti and they're coming into a town of 50,000 people, nobody knows what to do. But I know what to do. And we have to solve this problem. This is a problem created by Kamala and Joe. Joe put her in charge of the border. She's the worst border czar or border person. You know, she doesn't want to be called the border czar anymore. She didn't mind it. For 3.5 years, she didn't mind it, but now she doesn't want to be called the border czar. And she's right. She shouldn't be called the border czar because it's a disgrace. There's never been anybody has done such a bad job on a border in the history of the world, not just here. And we will straighten it out, but she's not going to straighten it out. If she got elected, you would have 150 million people in this country. Our country would be overrun, and our country would be, frankly, it would be a wasteland. It would be horrible.
Yeah. Well, you know, speaking of people coming in, we've had huge problems abroad. Obviously, Iran has hacked your campaign. They've had.
How about that?
And apparently the Harris campaign has been the recipient of some of that. They say they haven't. How do you respond to that?
Well, the FBI said they have. It's gone over to the Democrats, the information they hacked. I don't know what it can be, but it's not a nice thing to happen. I call it Iran, 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 just like Russia, Russia, Russia. We had to put up with that for 2.5 years. And after 2.5 years, I could have told them the first hour, but after 2.5 years, and they know it was a hoax. Mm-hmm. But this isn't a hoax. This is real. I mean, this is real stuff. They hacked my campaign. They spied on my campaign, and they gave the information to Kamala. So when is the grand jury meeting? I'd like to know. Is there going to be a grand jury? We went through 2.5 years on a hoax. This is not a hoax. This was found by the FBI. I congratulate them for that. But this is not a hoax. They spied on my campaign, and they gave the information to the Harris campaign.
Yeah, well, they're the first people to spy on your campaign, too. You've had issues with that. Well,
we had Obama and Biden spy on my campaign, too.
Former President Trump in a sit-down interview with former Navy SEAL and combat veteran Carl Higbie, who, of course, discussed Biden's Afghanistan disaster and the 2 ongoing wars with the former president.
I was in Iraq, never Afghanistan, but it hurt my soul to see this rapid pullout. And they try to blame it on you as, well, you had a plan. Well, yes, there were metrics to be met. How do you respond to them?
Well, I heard the other day they tried to blame it on me. For a while they didn't because it doesn't play. But we had a great plan. And they understood the plan. But the plan was subject to doing a lot of different things. But number one, you don't pull out the military first, okay? They pulled out the military first. You pull out the military last. First, you get your American citizens out. You get some other people that were loyal to us out, not the number of people that they took. But there are people like interpreters and others that were very loyal to us that are probably maybe gone now or in great danger. We just took out thousands and thousands of people. Half of the people we took out were probably terrorists. But we had a plan, and those people, think of it, because of how badly it was done, 13 dead, many horribly wounded, $85 billion worth of equipment goes to them. They display it every year at their little parade. They have a parade where they show the Americans with the equipment. My plan was subject to following certain steps. And they didn't follow those steps. And I told my people, nope, it's dead. And then they'd follow the steps. And it was phase 2, and they had to follow the steps. They had to follow all of the stuff. They didn't do any of it. And that would mean it was dead. Now then, once we called them on it, because it was subject to, they started doing everything perfectly. It would have been perfect. But these people, they took it over. They had no idea. They just moved. But here's the thing. You have to move the military out last. Because once the military moved out, it was a disaster. And then they had that lift, that so-called airlift that was so horrible. That's where we lost our 13 young soldiers. Yeah. But a lot of people so horrifically wounded. Carl, they never talk about that. They never like to talk about no arms, no legs, the face just wiped out. They talk about the 13 dead, and of course we shouldn't. I got to know those families. They're incredible people. But they never talk about soldiers that lost a leg or both legs or both arms, right. Or a soldier that lost 2 arms and 2 legs is otherwise very badly wounded beyond that with the face. And nobody ever talks about that. And it's so horrible what that was. That was I think it was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country.
I would agree, sir. The other thing you didn't mention, Kim Jong-un, all right, this is someone who hasn't gotten a lot of attention recently, but, in your book, you talk about he had an opportunity like no other to be remembered as the leader who ushered in a glorious new era of security and prosperity for his people. People don't give you credit for crossing that line and going into that country and having a conversation with him.
Well, I did, and I got along with him great. And he liked me, and I must tell you, I got along with him great. I can't say, if I'd say I like him, the press would say, oh, he liked Kim Jong-un. I got along with him great. I understood him.
Well, that's how you get things done.
By the way, tough guy, smart guy, and we were not in danger. When they turned over, when I took over, I sat with President Obama, and which is a tradition, as you know. You sit sometimes for 10 minutes and sometimes for a long time. I sat with him a long time, actually. And I said, what's the greatest problem? He said, North Korea. That's Kim Jong-un. And I said, have you spoken to him? Have you talked to him? No. Have you called him? And, I guess they were a little bit vague on that. The answer is they tried calling. He wouldn't talk to the Americans. He wouldn't talk to them. But he talked to me. And we had meetings. We had 2 meetings. And I will tell you, it was amazing. We became, let's put it this way, we were not in danger. And South Korea was not in danger. Now South Korea is in great danger. and he has a tremendous nuclear stockpile, and he doesn't like the people in this. He doesn't like our leaders at all. He says it very openly. He's very plain spoken in that sense. He says it very openly. But we had a very good relationship. I had a great relationship with Putin. Putin would never have done what he did without me there. In fact, they started lining up at the border after I left, and I said, he must be doing that for purposes of negotiation. Good negotiator. And I think he was. And then he got, I will say this, Biden said the worst things. He said the exact opposite of what he should have said. But I believe Putin lined up at the border to negotiate, and he ended up in a war that's so bad for everybody. And it could lead to World War III. With this group of leaders, the same people that did Afghanistan. Do you know, we said Afghanistan was bad. You'd know this better than anybody because you were such a big military guy and hero. The Afghanistan situation, Milley should have been fired. Everybody that even touched it or smelled it should be fired. He didn't fire anybody.
Donald Trump sitting down with our Carl Higbie. The former president went on to say these are the same people handling Russia and that he will end the Russian invasion of Ukraine before he even gets into office in January. And here is some additional commentary from Carl Higbie if you missed his show at 5 o'clock Eastern.
Every empire, folks, every nation, every dynasty, they've had a pivotal challenge right around its 250th year mark. And in that moment, that decision had to be made, and it was determined whether they would survive or fall. America is at that moment. We're there. This country, all of us have the choice to make. For the first time in the history of our country, we're deciding whether or not we're going to reverse the exponential growth of government, or by voting for Democrats, allow it to sink its claws deeper into us. Forget Donald Trump for just a minute here. Our founding fathers designed a representative government for a reason. And the further we've gotten from that is unbelievable. The less represented, I feel, at least the average person probably feels as well. And the more represented a very small but a very wealthy group has grown to be. Ironically, the very things Democrats campaign against, like, big corporations, they have embraced wholeheartedly, seemingly ignoring the reality of their very concept. You think people in D.C. represent you? They have an entirely different set of rules upon them. And why? They're citizens. They're just like you and me. They work for us. We pay their salaries. We don't owe them. They owe us. And if you think I'm wrong, why were members of Congress exempted from Obamacare? You and I had to prove that we had health insurance or we would be penalized in a country that doesn't force us to prove that we're citizens, by the way, in order to reap the benefits of our tax system. It's unbelievable. Members of Congress exempted themselves from vaccine mandates, but they tried to force you and me to prove that we were vaccinated, even to buy groceries sometimes. They tried to have me fired from my job for refusing the jab. But if you remember, if you're a member of Congress or even worked for a congressman, you got special dispensation. You didn't have to get it. If Congress lies to me, it's called politics. If I lie to them, the people who work for me, it's a felony. If members of a sports team bet on a game that they play in, they lose their job. Maybe you get arrested, maybe fined. But if a member of Congress bets via stock trading on companies they regulate, nothing. If you do it, you and I do it, go to jail. Just ask Martha Stewart. If people living on our dime, doing work supposedly at the behest of us, are exempt from us knowing about it too, they have special waivers to the Freedom of Information Act. Law enforcement can't go seek, they can go seek a FISA court and get some unconventional warrant to spy on us. I would say it's unconstitutional. But Congress? No, they're exempt. They have the FISA court has no authority over looking into them, that they created, by the way. You want to know why America is rejecting politics as usual? Because they have spent us into oblivion. We have mortgaged our children's futures at the behest of 535 rotating people who almost always end up more wealthy on the way out the door than before they went in, despite a fairly low salary, all things considered. Donald Trump is just the manifestation of how we feel. No, he's the first guy to fight back, put his fist in the air and say no. Nothing the establishment or old guard Republicans can do will reinstill faith in another massive GOP takeover. We want a massive overhaul of the federal government, folks. But they don't do that because everybody in the establishment, on the left and the right, is getting richer by like factors of 10 while trying to increase our dependency on them, while they try to strip us of more of our God-given rights. And I'm tired of it.
So let that sink in. Great stuff, as always. Carl Higbie is the host of Frontline, 5 o'clock Eastern. Before sitting down with Carl in New York last night, Trump spoke at an event in D.C. focused on anti-Semitism.
This ugly tide of anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas bigotry and hate will be turned back and crushed starting at noon on January 20th, 2025.
Kamala Harris sat down for a live streamed event in Michigan with Oprah Winfrey.
Among everything that is wrong with these bans and what has happened in terms of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, it's a healthcare crisis. It's a healthcare crisis that affects the patient and the profession.
The profession? The profession of killing babies? Or not being able to make a lot of money by providing abortions. Did you catch the word ban? She again talked about the non-existent Trump abortion ban. She will likely do more of the same today when she speaks about abortion in Atlanta. She's also hitting Wisconsin today. The Team Trump Agenda 47 policy tour has big events in Arizona and Nevada today. The former president himself will be back in North Carolina tomorrow afternoon for a rally in Wilmington. And I cannot journalistically mention North Carolina without mentioning what's going on with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who may be at the Trump event tomorrow.
I'm not going to get into the minutia of how somebody manufactured these salacious tabloid lies, but I can tell you this. There's been over $1 million spent on me through AI by a billionaire son who's bound and determined to destroy me.
Robinson saying he will not step down, coming under attack for comments he allegedly made about 16 years ago, first reported by CNN. And this morning, even ABC News saying that has not yet been confirmed, or those comments from Robinson, alleged comments from Robinson, have not yet been confirmed. All right, so Trump will be in Wilmington tomorrow, big rally. J.D. Vance has his own event in Pennsylvania tomorrow. RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard are hosting a Trump event tomorrow in Las Vegas. So there is a lot of campaigning that's going to be happening over the weekend. We will be covering it all on Newsmax, of course, and a lot of football. If last night's snooze fest in New York or the constant Taylor Swift stuff hasn't turned you off yet, listen to this.
The Arizona Cardinals, they're apologizing after stadium staff forced a fan to throw her pro-Trump hat in the trash. Susan Rosner, a season ticket holder and longtime fan of the team, was wearing a black MAGA hat to Sunday's game. No big deal, right? You wear a baseball hat. When she was suddenly stopped by security and denied entry, she was told it violated the stadium's policies on prohibited items, and then she was forced to throw it in the trash or risk missing out on the game. Say that 5 times fast. Here is more from Susan.
I am super freedom of speech. I could care less if someone had a Kamala hat or T-shirt on. I do feel like part of the problem is this security woman definitely had a bias with my hat. In retrospect, I wish I would have stood my ground a little bit, but I wasn't sure what the repercussions would be.
In response, the team said this. In an isolated incident at Sunday's game, a stadium security member misunderstood a policy on prohibited items. Like most venues, signage, posters, flags, or displays that are political in nature are not permitted. However, that did not apply in this instance. Moving forward, we will work to provide clarity to all stadium personnel in these situations. We have also reached out to the individual involved to communicate that their experience was not consistent with our policies and practices and to apologize for that. We actually heard the woman say, I wish I would have stood my ground, but I was concerned about the consequences. I'm paraphrasing here. The fact that she should be concerned about the consequences for wearing a hat is absolutely crazy and shows me how extreme things have gotten in this country.
Right, but we've seen that there actually have been consequences. There was a Philadelphia Eagles football game. George Norcross, who's a party boss in New Jersey, he was thrown out for waving an Israeli flag. So, this does happen. And I think she just didn't want to get kicked out of the game. Her husband really wanted to see the game. And it was unfortunate. And, speaking of consequences, what were the consequences for that staff member who
That's
was
what I'd like to
really in the wrong? And really, frankly, I think it was harassment what happened to this woman.
Exactly. That is Jeanette Hoffman, president of Marathon Public Affairs, who specializes in strategic messaging along with our Katrina Zish. And the statement from the Arizona Cardinals put all of the blame directly on the staff member, as Katrina mentioned. And maybe that person wasn't trained correctly, or maybe she just didn't like the MAGA hat. If you made a mistake like that with a customer at your job, would you be disciplined or at least written up? Most likely, yes. And they should at least give the season ticket holder their customer, right? $25 or $30 to go buy a new hat or a food voucher. I hope to see a sea of MAGA hats at this weekend's Cardinals game or whenever they have another home game there in Arizona. If you're a Harris supporter, wear a Harris hat, whatever. And notice that you don't see any John 3:16 signs at NFL games anymore. Pretty soon, it'll be against the rules, because almost everything now is against the rules. It'll be against the rules to make the sign of the cross, as many players do when they come out on the field or score a touchdown. All right, be sure to keep up with all of the news today, tonight, and throughout the weekend on Newsmax TV and Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus for all of your favorite shows and guests. Rob Schmitt, Greg Kelly, Greta Van Susteren, Carl Higbie, Bianca De La Garza, Todd Starnes, John Bachman, Wake Up America, and more. Don't forget about the Wake Up America Weekend Edition tomorrow and Sunday, 7 a.m. Eastern, followed by Saturday and Sunday Agenda, America Right Now, the Gorka Reality Check twice on Sunday, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Have a fantastic and safe weekend, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's Jerry Callahan from The Callahan Show. You can listen to us every day. We react to the latest news, politics, sports, and all the madness in the world. I'll give you my opinion with a little edge, a little attitude. I'm an unapologetic right-winger, trapped behind enemy lines in deep blue Boston, so I'm used to taking on the mainstream media mob. You can hear us anywhere you get your podcast, or you can listen every day at newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's